Hi friends! It's time to start thinking about making robots in another way. We talk a lot about making art with different processes and different materials. Remember when we talk about materials in the art room, we call them medium. The medium that we use to create are the supplies that we're using to create. So yesterday, we used the medium of drawing. We drew with our pencils and then we added some color as we were creating robots. Today we're going to work in the collage medium. You're going to need your paper, all your construction paper out of your art folder. And then you're going to need one of the large pieces of black construction paper. We are going to make a robot and glue our robot onto a black construction paper. It's going to be the background. That's the thing happening behind our robot. So we're going to get started, but you're going to need a lot of supplies today to do your work. You're going to want a pencil so that you can draw some shapes on your paper, and then you'll need your scissors to cut them out. It's easier to draw them first with a pencil because then when we cut, we have a line to follow. It can make it a little bit easier for us than to try to just cut out a shape without tracing first. You'll need your bottle of glue in order to glue your shapes down after you lay out your robot and you like the way that it works. At the end of this lesson, I'll tell you what the next step will be. But right now, let's focus on creating shapes to create a collage paper robot. All right, I got a big pile of supplies in front of me, but I'm going to need to clear out my workspace. It's going to be awfully hard to work like this. So you should have a bunch of papers from your folder, and I want you to set them off to the side. You can keep your paper in front of you. Remember, we want a nice tall piece of paper. We're going to make a nice big tall robot. I want to see if you can really cut some bigger shapes that'll help you to fill up your paper. Filling our paper is one of our goals in art. Because if I wanted to make a teeny tiny little robot, I would give you a teeny tiny piece of paper for the background. Since I gave you a piece of paper this big, let's work to fill up the paper that's this big. All right, before we start, we should remind ourselves some scissor safety. This is the second time we're using scissors for a project, so it's a good time to stop and remind ourselves what to do to use our scissors safely. When we're cutting, our thumb goes in the hole and our other fingers go here. When we cut, our scissors are pointing away from ourselves, and we lift our thumb and close it in order to do the cutting. Our helper hand is going to hold and turn the paper because our scissors should never point back to us as we're cutting. That's a no-no. It's way easier to keep them pointing away from us and to have your helper hand turn the paper as you're cutting. When you're finished cutting, your scissors are closed and set off out of the way. They should not be left open. That exposes the part that is the sharp part, so we keep them cut. If we're carrying our scissors, we're going to remember to wrap our hand around the part that's closed, that's sharp, so that way if we were to fall, we would not get hurt with our scissors. It's also important to keep scissors out of the hands of our younger siblings. And remember that we only use our scissors to cut paper, nothing else. As soon as you're finished with your scissors and all your supplies, they should always go right back into your supply bag so that you have them available for the next time that we work on a project together. Okay, now that we have some scissor safety reminders out of the way, it's time to get started. So remember, what we're doing is just like yesterday. Yesterday we drew a robot and we drew lots of different shapes to create our robot. We're going to do the same thing today, but we're going to do it by drawing those shapes on the paper and then cutting them out. You can use any of the pieces of paper that you want to. You got some that might have some designs or patterns on them already. Remember, we are adding our patterns to it, but we already have some with patterns. But we have some without too. So think about what shape you might use to create your robots. I think I'm going to get started by drawing a shape for my robot's head. One of the easiest things I can do to make cutting easier is I'm going to cut on this edge first, so I can get this big piece of paper out of the way. Now remember, my helper hand is going to hold and turn my paper as I go, so that my cutting hand just focuses on staying still and cutting away from my body as I go. Close my scissors and set them out of the way. All right, this is definitely probably not something I can save. Maybe I'll sit it here just in case I want some lines for my robot, but this would be something if when I'm finished, I might put in the trash can, not put back in my folder. But this piece, if I don't end up using more of that, that definitely goes back in my folder because I can still make lots of art with that piece of paper. All right, we're just going to lay stuff out. We're going to cut the shapes and lay them out. I want you to make sure you really like the way your robot looks before you start gluing anything down. This is a pretty good piece of paper here. That's a pretty good robot body shape. I think I'm just going to cut some of the bottom part off. Do I want it wide or tall? I think maybe tall. Okay, so you're just going to start to place the things down as you go. How about some green? Ooh, let's see. I think I want to use some triangles. So I'm going to draw 2 triangles to be part of the antenna for my robot. I'm going to go ahead and cut. Again, I'm going to try to just cut off that big piece. Let's get that piece out of the way. Sometimes when we cut, we don't cut exactly on the lines. And if you don't cut exactly on the lines, but you don't want it to show, just flip your shape over. Let the tracer line be on the back, and then it's hidden. Okay, there's 1, 2 triangles. All right, so far I've used 2 rectangles, one with kind of curvy edges, and 2 triangles. Maybe I'll save these triangles in my excess pile. Maybe I'll find something cool to use those for. All right. I'm going to make a shape for my robot's arms. I'm just going to cut out one, and I'm going to show you a trick because I want my arms to look kind of alike for my robot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out my first robot arm shape, and because I want it to match, I'm going to trace it. I'm going to use the first one as a tracer. And that's going to help my robot arms to match. See, my helper hand has an important job for tracing too. It holds the tracer down so that I can trace around it. So there's one arm. Oh, I like that shape. Now I'm going to cut out the other one. And first I'm going to cut off the excess paper so it stays out of my way. And it'll help me focus on cutting my shape better. Notice my helper hand fingers really try to stay as far away from my scissors as I can but still hold it tight, or hold my paper still. I don't want to accidentally cut my fingers. So these smaller pieces are going in my extra pile here. I'm trying to stay organized as I work. That'll help me clean up. So my bigger pieces go in the pile that might go back into my folder if I don't use them. And then my littler pieces are going in a scrap pile. And if I don't use them today, they'll probably go into the recycling bin. Okay. I think on this guy, I want to give him some roller wheels. But I want to make them look, like they are like the tank wheels. So I'm going to cut these shapes out first. I'm going to go across the top, get the extra big piece out of my way for cutting, set it to my save pile, and then start cutting my littler pieces. So as I'm working here, you could be trying to follow along and make yours match mine, but you can also be cutting any of your own shapes right now. We could just be sitting here and working together while you create your own idea of a robot. It doesn't have to be like mine. Okay, that one had a lot of pencil lines, so I flipped that upside down to hide my tracer lines. Okay, it's looking pretty good. So I wanted these to look like tank wheels, like big wheels. And so I think what I'm going to do to make that happen is I'm going to cut some strips of paper so I can add like some stripes over top to show the big pieces of tread on the tires. So I'm going to cut some strips. Ooh, that one shot across my workspace. I kind of measured with my eyeball how long I wanted my pieces to be. And I'm going to trim these up to match, to be the same length by holding them next to each other. That one looks good. Does that kind of look like some tire tread? I think so. Scoot him over to make room for the tread on the other side. So this is a way that I'm creating one of our line patterns, but this time I'm doing it with the paper. There we go. Okay, I got the basics here pretty good, I think, right now. I think it's time to start thinking about maybe some buttons or dials for on top of my robots. I'm gonna get my green back out. I think maybe some circles. So cut off my extra. That makes my cutting easier. And you see how, especially when you're cutting a circle, the helper hand is really going to help turn the paper, and you can focus on keeping your scissors on the line. And then remember, if it doesn't work out perfect, you just flip it over and you can hide your pencil lines. It's hard to cut perfect on the lines. That's why flipping our pieces over is a great little trick to help. An idea if I is that making it look like some little dials? I think so. I like that. That's a fun way to use my triangles. Okay. Now I think I need to make a mouth for my robots. I have a piece of paper. My mouth, I like making a rectangle mouth and then giving him some silly looking teeth by making a crisscross pattern on my rectangle. I like that mouth for a robot. Okay, and then some eyes. I'm going to make some half circle eyes. You see how I'm trying to draw my shapes kind of close together so that I can still save as much paper as possible. We don't want to waste our art making supplies. We want to be careful that we're using every bit that we can. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. I have lots of different shapes on here. I have rectangles of all different sizes. I have some free form shapes, those organic shapes in the curve of my arms that I made. I have these little half circles here, some triangles, and I'm really excited with how this robot is turning out. And I think I'm ready to start gluing down. Let's have a few reminders of glue, and I'm going to speed up my work as I glue everything down. So remember that your glue should have been closed from the last time. That way we can make sure it doesn't dry out. And you just twist the top to open it up. The best part for gluing down, I kind of start with the little stuff first. This just needs a little dot of glue. Remember, when we get to the bigger pieces, that's when we look to trace around the outside, but for our smaller pieces, just a little line or a dot of glue should be plenty. And then I'll glue my circle on. So I'm going to glue all of the detail kind of pieces on first, and then I'll glue the big pieces onto my paper. That way I can still remember where I want everything to go. If I move everything off the paper, I might get confused at my plan and forget where things go. Okay, I'll go ahead and glue my robot's face on. I'm gonna still thinking right now about what are the other details I'm gonna add, because that's gonna be the next step, is adding some of those details like we did with our one yesterday after we drew all our shapes. Okay, I'm gonna get ready to speed this up. All right, look at this little guy I got here. All right, next steps. on your own, I want you to think about adding some more details. I did make some stripes, those line details we've been practicing to make patterns to decorate. I made some stripes with my paper, but we can also get our markers out and we can add some more details too. Or you're welcome to use your crayons. So like my marker is a great tool to use to go back and create the teeth part for my robot. And I can use it to make some eyeballs inside my eye shape for my robot. I want you to think about what details are you going to go add to your robot. I'm going to try to think of some line shapes I want to use so that I can help fill the space in. So I think I'll have some zigzags. For his arms. What other patterns can you think about that you might like to use? Some stripes that can go in all different types of directions. I kind of feel like this robot is looking a little bit like Yoda, a Yoda bot. Maybe I'll add some little arrow details to make this look even more like some gauges that are measuring things for my robots. Okay, lots more spaces that I can add details to. So maybe you're going to draw some dials on here too. Kind of, that line makes it look like it's maybe measuring something there. Maybe it's a heartbeat line. I don't know what this robot does yet, but I know I still have lots of room to be creative, to add line patterns, to add some designs, to finish filling this space of my silly little Yoda bot. I think that's what I need to call him. Yoda bot. All right. I'm going to add one more little section here. Always love good spirals. Nice snail shell lines. Okay, Yoda bot, I think you're done. I like you so much. Put the lid tight on my marker. I have lots of supplies to clean up. I have a little pile that's perfect for the trash can, and I have some other bigger shapes that'll be perfect for another time. I'm going to put my extra paper back into my folder so I can use it to make art again. I'm going to put all my paper scraps away because it's my job to clean up my art making space when I'm finished. I'm going to let my Yoda bot dry all the way and maybe think of something else to do. All right. This week, 2 robot projects. One that we drew, One that we did as a collage, both so full of shapes and colors and lines, which are the things that we've learned so far this year. So this is a great project to explore and remind ourselves all of those things. I hope you had fun making your robots this week. If you want to, when you take pictures to send them in, tell me about your robot. Maybe you gave your robots a name. Like this one I think is a Yoda bot. What does my Yoda bot do? Maybe you can tell me a little bit about your artwork. If you really like your robots, what if you drew me a picture about what your robots are doing? You can make more art with your robots. Turn your robot into a book character. What is their story about? If you feel creatively inspired, you can make more art, or you can just send me these 2 pictures to turn in your art for this week. I hope you're having fun and feeling creative and inspired to keep making art at home. I'll see you next week for our next assignment. Bye, friends.